Some of us might be leading people on our teams that may not meet the mark or be as skilled as we thought they were going to be. Shoot, some of us may have been on teams where we're the ones a part of the work, part of the task, and just didn't live up to the expectation that was expected of us to be on part of that team. So, what do we do about the situation? Do we just let folks power through and struggle? Do we just let them go? Do we just ignore it? Well, in this episode of Shift Your Lens, we're going to take a step to ask ourselves as leaders, how do we help manage those team members who may be struggling? How do we identify it? And what ways can we step in as leaders to help elevate them so they can be successful on the teams? Welcome to Shift Your Lens, where we tackle real challenges leaders face, especially middle managers within the workplace. My name is Ray White, 12-year middle manager, leadership coach, community builder, and the writer of the Leaders Lens newsletter. And this series talks about the questions that people are experiencing, their challenges that they're experiencing in their leadership, and we get to answer them here on this particular series. And in this episode, we're going to talk about how can we handle these moments where employees and staffs may not necessarily living up to expectation or executing at a high level, and how do we as leaders step into that with grace and gratitude and expectations that help them become successful. Because we all know how hard it can be to be on a team, to be in a place where you are just not doing really well. I remember when I first started leading that I did not feel well equipped to execute on the task at hand. It was a role where I literally just stepped in. I was asked to set up some volunteer management meetings, volunteer management trainings, and I didn't really have a blueprint. I did not have the skills to execute or to navigate the space well. I just had a document and was told, go forth and conquer, right? If you were on the outside looking in and watched me rumbling, stumbling, and fumbling, trying to set up this volunteer management onboarding trainings, you probably would have thought, that guy is not cut out for the job. he ain't the one. We need to get him out of here, right? Luckily, very grateful to have leaders who were able to see me and say, hey, you know what? I see what you're trying to do. Let me help you get to the point where you can feel at least a little bit more comfortable, right? Or more equipped to handle the situation versus just fumbling your way to this particular task and not executing at a level that we all know you can execute or the level that we are asking for within the organization. What I appreciate about that experience is that the leader was able to help navigate and guide and create the space to allow me to grow into that, not just let me stumble across it. And the issue that I've seen in a lot of our workplaces is that leaders don't necessarily take the time to outline and define what those expectations are. And that's what helps create the struggling staff member. Now, granted, we all have a role and responsibility in this space. We can't just completely take it away from the direct employee or the staff member who is struggling in that. But we as leaders, if we're tasked or have the role entitled to help shape that team, then it's up to us to say, what can we do to help this employee, to help this staff member, to help them execute at a level where they are producing a result that they're all proud of. And then what do we need to do if that doesn't work out the way that we thought it can, right? This is definitely a big gap that we see a lot in the leadership development space, where there is this unsaid expectation that leaders have all the answers and are just naturally equipped to step into the space, which is not true. It's a developed skill to find, navigate, and guide people to this particular deal. But if we do not take the time to work on this particular skill, then staff members will feel burnt out. They will feel disengaged. We will see turnover because they feel like they can't do the work and they don't have what they need to be successful. The misalignment will continue to erode in their bodies, and then they'll look for jobs elsewhere. So as a middle manager, it's your role to help navigate and step into that space. So what I want to do is to help give you 4 questions that you can use to assess and guide yourself in the situation to where you can lead with clarity and with care. So the first question is, how do you define a skilled member? There is this misnomer thinking that once somebody steps into a particular role, they just know how to do it, right? Once I stepped into volunteer management, I just knew how to do volunteer management. And that could be true in some instances, but may not necessarily be true in the instance that I was a part of. What you're asking some team members to do might be a new concept to them to get engaged with. So you have to then take a moment to step back to say, how do you define what a skilled team member is? What does that mean to you? In what situation should an employee have based on the situation, what are the skills that an employee should have in order to execute at a high level? Should they be uh, knowledgeable in the work, in the task? Should they be aware of their customers and their stakeholders? Should they know all the standard operating procedures and know where they land? Should they have prior experience in these particular areas that can translate that experience into this space? Those elements are really key for you to know and to understand. This is what a skilled team member looks like, and they can excel well in this space because the situation calls for that skill to come out. And once you understand what the situation is and what the skill is, that provides you the more questions to say, if they're new, how do they handle it? If this person is in the wrong seat, it just needs to be in a different seat based upon the skills and the need. What type of clarity is needed so that way they know how to be successful? Defining what a skilled team member looks like can help you assess whether the person that you're working with can be supported well enough through their struggle or find a new outlet and avenue for them to be successful elsewhere. And speaking of success, don't worry about my chicken scratch, right? We got to be able to define what is the standard of success. I remember when we were doing some project management work way back in the day within my role as an analyst, the question was always brought up, what is the definition of done, right? Like, how do we know we've reached the goal? We reached the end goal. And that had to be defined and quantified so folks can know we're just not continuing to tweak and change certain things just because we can, but we've executed the project well enough and executed the work well enough to where we can ship it out. And we know that it's going to be at least 80% of the way done with some tweaks and changes based upon the variability of the environment that we are working in. The standard of success is similar to understanding the definition of a skilled employee is really key because then you know what the end goal is. You know what the deadline is. You know what success looks like and the touchdown looks like, right? If you play in sports, you know that the clarity of understanding what success looks like and the goals look like is a nice thing to have. The clarity of clear expectations helps in building that trust and is a foundation for somebody to know they can get the work done. If the employee knows that they can see what success looks like and know what success looks like, and you're giving them that expectation, that increases the level of trust they have in you because you are looking out for them and for their well-being. It creates a high sense of trust and high sense of relationship because you know that you want them to be successful and you're showing them success looks like by executing on these particular things based upon your workplace. So define what success looks like. Take a minute to dissect that and set that standard so they know what they can strive towards along with the skills necessary to execute that. The third question now reaches to understanding the relationship of the person that you're talking to who is struggling. And that is, what is their perspective? What do they see is a part of the work, a part of the task? What do they see is struggling or their work efforts and their ability to contribute to the work? Or do they know that they're struggling? Do they understand that they're struggling? Do they even know what it means to be successful? Because yes, we're not perfect. We're going to struggle. Sometimes you're going to give your best effort and you still won't do very well, right? You see it all the time in sports. Sports teams do their phenomenal job and they execute a play really well, but they still lose the game. But however, you have to take a moment to step back and say, okay, while effort is key and is good, but let's look at the environment they're part of. Let's look at the work that they're doing. Let's look at their understanding of the work. Let's look at the resources and tools that are necessary to execute that work. Are they all adequate enough for them to be successful in it? Sometimes we may think we're just plopping somebody in a particular space and they're just going to thrive and flourish like a plant in a beautiful bed garden, right? But we didn't pull the weeds, or we didn't till the soil, or we didn't even water the soil, right? We don't even have soil. They're growing in the concrete. These elements are necessary for you to look into your workplace and say, all right, If success looks like them executing at this particular benchmark or KPI, if we know the skilled team member has to have these particular qualities, let's make sure that this person both has the qualities and has the tools to execute those qualities at a high level so they can reach that expected goal. And if that is not the case, then you can analyze all the things necessary to their success versus just looking at them as an employee and saying, they ain't cutting it. So take the time to sit with them and ask them, what is your perspective of this work? Tell me what you're experiencing. What are the issues? Because that could be some great opportunity for conversation to say, oh, now that I know, here's a standard operating procedure that will give you the clearer and defined steps to execute the goal and task that you've been asked to do, and could reduce the struggling in a major way. And then again, from a relationship standpoint, that helps build trust from them to you and you to them, because you've had the conversation. They see that you support them and they're willing and wanting to work into that space because you know they got their back. Lastly, the last question that you need to ask in supporting a struggling employee is, what is the follow-up plan? You defined the skills. You understood what success looks like. You had a conversation with the employee of what their specific area that they are just experiencing. Maybe it's a struggle, maybe it's not, but what are they experiencing? So you know how to guide them and coach them to be successful. And then you need to have a plan to follow up. How will you support them? What will you provide them? What training would you send them to? What are the accountability metrics to ensure that, hey, now that we've had this conversation, now that we've cleared the air, now that we know what the expectations should look like, now we got to go win, right? Now we got to take the step forward, moving into that space. Like when I stated, when I was doing volunteer management in setting up employee onboarding, I had a great follow-up conversation with the leader my one up saying, hey, you did an excellent job of identifying the volunteers and knowing the skill sets, but then you got to set the room up in a different way. You got to understand that there's some people who may not necessarily be there on time or be there right away. So how are you going to take the steps to make sure they get the information that they need so they can do their work better? Okay, cool. Now that we've had that conversation, we define success. You got your perspective. Now here's the XYZ plan so you can do it better next time. And that will help say, okay, cool. Now I know what to do next, right? You see it in sports, you see it in the workplace. If you have the follow-up plan and hold people accountable, they'll be able to execute better. And then you have a new starting point now to say, hey, we've reset the foundation, and now you have what you need to push forward a little bit better. And when we reach a new challenge, we know how we have a formula to process that. But if we start seeing the same challenges over and over, that boys is a different conversation, which I'll probably link a article in the show notes of what you could do in that particular instance. However, these are the 4 questions that you can ask your employees when you're noticing some struggling within your teams. How do you define a skilled team member? What is the task and that helps set the standard of success for that, to complete that task? What is their perspective of the particular situation? And then what's the follow-up plan that you can provide them so they can be held accountable and excel in their particular space? All the while you're doing this, it's truly important that your posture stays in curiosity. It stays focused on growth and progression of growth that happens over time for you and them. You're more focused on what the solution is going to be, not just the problem at hand. And then you're also helping build psychological safety so they know that they have what it takes and feel confident and comfortable to execute that underneath your leadership. So those are the 4 questions. That's the process to think about. I would love to hear from you. How do you navigate and support staff and employees who might be struggling within your workspace? Let me know in the comments below. If you have a question that you want answered through the Shift Your Lens series, be sure to hit up the Leaders Lens survey that gives you the opportunity to express the leadership challenge that you're experiencing, because we all go through it. You're not leading alone. And what I want to help do is provide just some of my 2 cents of research and experience that can be of a guide to you, but this is a community where we all can grow and share it together. So thank you for listening to Shift Your Lens. Be sure you lead yourself and others well, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.